Hey there, movie lovers! Welcome back to Fade to Fact, the channel where we sink our fangs into the juiciest behind-the-scenes secrets of classic Hollywood films. And today, we're diving into a cult classic that's equal parts horror, comedy, and pure 80-second cool. The Lost Boys, 1987. Set in the fictional California beach town of Santa Carla, which, according to the movie, just so happens to be the murder capital of the world. The Lost Boys follows two brothers who discover their new hometown is crawling with vampires. Stylish, funny, and just the right amount of scary, it became a defining entry in the vampire genre, helping to reinvent bloodsuckers for a new generation. Think leather jackets, motorcycles, and a killer rock soundtrack. But here's the thing, The Lost Boys wasn't just a stylish teen horror flick. Behind the scenes, this movie was full of unexpected twists, last-minute casting changes, wild on-set stories, surprising cameos, and clever filmmaking tricks you probably never noticed. It was a production where the vibe was just as iconic as what ended up on screen. So grab your garlic, avoid any mysterious invitations to the boardwalk, and let's sink our teeth into the untold tales that made this vampire classic so unforgettable. Here are 20 things you never knew about The Lost Boys. 1. The title was inspired by Peter Pan. Before fangs and leather jackets got involved, the phrase Lost Boys came from J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. In Barrie's story, the Lost Boys are children who never grow up, and director Joel Schumacher thought that was a perfect metaphor for vampires. Eternal youth, wild adventures, living outside the rules. Sounds like the ultimate 1,982nd bad boy fantasy. By using the name, Schumacher gave the movie a playful twist that hinted it wouldn't be your typical gothic vampire tale. It's also a sly nod to how The Lost Boys flips the idea of forever young into something dark and dangerous. 2. The original script was a very different movie. When the project first landed at Warner Brothers, Janice Fisher and James Jeremias had written it as a much lighter, kid-friendly adventure, think The Goonies but with vampires. The characters were younger, around 13 or 14, and the Frog Brothers were nerdy Boy Scout types. Even the vampires were meant to be goofy, rather than sexy or threatening. When Schumacher came on board, he told the studio he wanted to make it sexy, hip, and scary. That meant aging up the characters, turning the Frog Brothers into hardcore vampire hunters, and giving the whole movie a sleek rock and roll edge. 3. The boardwalk was a real location. Santa Carla might be fictional, but the iconic boardwalk scenes were filmed at the real-life Santa Cruz Beach boardwalk in California. The crew shot mostly at night, which meant dealing with chilly coastal winds and plenty of curious locals watching from the sidelines. Interestingly, Santa Cruz had once been dubbed the murder capital of the world in real life, thanks to a string of serial killer cases in the 1,972nd, something the filmmakers leaned into for the film's atmosphere. Many of the rides and attractions you see in the movie are still there today, making it a popular pilgrimage spot for fans. 4. Kiefer Sutherland's iconic look was an accident. David's platinum blonde mullet wasn't exactly planned. Sutherland had gone to a stylist before filming and asked for a shorter cut, but a bleaching mishap left his hair nearly white. Schumacher loved it, thinking it made David look more otherworldly and dangerous. To complete the look, they gave him a custom leather trench coat that was reportedly so heavy it was uncomfortable to wear during long shooting days. But it worked. Sutherland's vampire leader became one of the most stylish villains of the decade. 5. The saxophone guy became an accidental icon. You can't talk about The Lost Boys without mentioning Tim Capello, the shirtless, oiled-up saxophone-playing performer in the beach concert scene. Capello was a real musician who toured with Tina Turner, and Schumacher thought his energy was perfect for the movie's surreal, dreamlike tone. The scene became so memorable that the sexy sax man turned into a cult meme decades later, inspiring everything from fan art to tribute performances. Ironically, Capello's role in the film is less than a minute long, but it's one of the most talked about moments. 6. The Frog Brothers took inspiration from action heroes. Corey Feldman, Edgar Frog, once revealed that Joel Schumacher told him to channel action stars like Sylvester Stallone and Chuck Norris for his role. Instead of playing the Frog Brothers as goofy comic relief, Feldman and Jameson Newlander, Alan Frog, delivered their lines with over-the-top seriousness, like hardened war veterans. The result? A hilarious contrast between their teenage bravado and the absurd situations they faced. Feldman even lowered his voice for extra tough guy effect, making his character instantly quotable. 7. The vampire lair was a real abandoned hotel. David's underground hideout wasn't a soundstage creation. It was inspired by a real, abandoned hotel structure in Santa Cruz that had been partially destroyed in the 1906 earthquake. The production team recreated the eerie, half-ruined look on a set, complete with crumbling columns and a sunken lobby, to give the vampires a grand but decayed home. Schumacher wanted it to feel like a place that was once full of life, but had long since rotted into darkness, a perfect metaphor for immortality gone wrong. The set was so detailed that even the crew admitted it was unsettling to walk through when the lights were dimmed. 8. Alex Winter almost quit mid-filming. Alex Winter, who played Marco, wasn't thrilled about spending hours in the makeup chair for his vampire prosthetics. The contact lenses were particularly uncomfortable, limiting his vision and making it hard to move during action scenes. At one point, the irritation got so bad that he considered walking off the set. Schumacher talked him down, promising to streamline the process, and Winter stuck it out, later admitting the look was worth it for how menacing it appeared on screen. 9. The motorcycles were customized for the film. The vampire gang's motorcycles weren't just pulled from a rental shop, they were custom-built to match each character's personality. The production team worked with local bike builders to modify the frames, add unique paint jobs, and fit powerful headlights for the night shoots. Kiefer Sutherland's bike, for example, had a heavier build to make David look more imposing, while the others had sleeker designs to emphasize speed and agility. These custom bikes became such a visual signature of the gang that they're now one of the most requested props by fans at memorabilia events. 10. The maggots and worms scene was pure practical effects. One of the most memorable moments in The Lost Boys is when Michael's Chinese takeout turns into writhing maggots and worms. No CGI was used, it was all practical effects with clever editing. The crew filmed real mealworms and maggots in food containers, then cut them with shots of untouched noodles and rice. The actors reacted as if they were holding the creepy version, even though it was swapped in later. The trick worked so well that audiences still squirm decades later. 11. The soundtrack became a cult hit. The film's soundtrack, featuring tracks like Cry Little Sister by Gerard McMahon, became as iconic as the movie itself. Schumacher personally curated the songs to blend rock, punk, and gothic influences, creating a sound that perfectly matched Santa Carla's dangerous allure. Decades later, the album still has a devoted fan base, and Cry Little Sister has been covered by numerous artists. Warner Brothers even released special vinyl editions for collectors. 12. The beach scene was freezing cold. That summer concert scene might look warm and inviting, but it was filmed in chilly night air on the California coast. Actors wore layers between takes, and some of the extras danced just to stay warm. Tim Capello, shirtless and covered in oil, reportedly shivered between takes despite his high-energy performance. The crew used heaters off-camera to keep everyone from freezing, though it didn't exactly match the on-screen illusion of a balmy beach night. 13. The comic shop was a real store. The Frog Brothers comic book shop wasn't a fabricated set, it was filmed inside a real store on the Santa Cruz boardwalk. The shop owners let the crew rearrange the shelves and fill it with DC titles to fit the script. In the decades since, fans have visited the location to recreate scenes, and some still refer to it as the Frog Brothers HQ. The real store has changed hands, but it occasionally pays tribute to its Lost Boys history. 14. The train bridge stunt was real. One of the film's most famous moments involves the vampires hanging from a fog-shrouded train bridge. While the drop beneath them wasn't deadly, the stunt was still dangerous. Actors had to grip actual metal beams high above the ground. Safety nets and harnesses were hidden from view, but the genuine fear you see in some of their faces came from the cold metal and the risk of slipping. The fog wasn't entirely natural either, it was enhanced with smoke machines for extra atmosphere. 15. Diane Wiest was cast for warmth. As the brothers' mom, Lucy, Diane Wiest brought a soft, nurturing presence to balance out the film's darker elements. Schumacher specifically wanted an actress who could make the audience care about the family's safety. Wiest, fresh off her Oscar win for Hannah and Her Sisters, gave the role more depth than a typical horror movie mom. Her chemistry with both Corey Haim and Jason Patric helped ground the story emotionally. 16. The movie boosted vampire pop culture. Before The Lost Boys, vampires were often portrayed as aristocratic, old-fashioned monsters in capes. This film reimagined them as young, stylish rebels, a look and attitude that influenced later works like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Twilight. By merging horror with teen culture, it proved that vampire stories could be both scary and irresistibly cool. The mix of rock music, fashion, and fast-paced action gave the genre a lasting facelift. 17. The ending almost had a twist. In early drafts, Max, Edward Herrmann, wasn't the head vampire. Instead, David was supposed to survive the final battle, hinting that the brothers hadn't truly won. Schumacher ultimately scrapped it, wanting a cleaner resolution, and a last laugh with Grandpa's famous, "One thing about living in Santa Carla I never could stomach" line. The change made the ending more satisfying and helped cement it as one of the best final lines in horror comedy history. 18. The vampire contacts were painful. Those glowing vampire eyes weren't CGI, they came from large hand-painted contact lenses. They were thick, uncomfortable, and limited the actor's vision so much that they sometimes had to be led to their marks. The lenses could only be worn for a few minutes at a time, making certain scenes a logistical nightmare. Still, the eerie effect was worth the discomfort, as it became one of the film's most striking visual trademarks. 19. There were plans for a sequel. Warner Brothers initially considered a direct sequel titled The Lost Girls, which would have focused on a new group of female vampires. The idea never made it past early development, though there were later attempts to revive the franchise through comics and straight-to-video follow-ups. None of them matched the original's cult status, proving that The Lost Boys was lightning in a bottle. 20. The Grandpa's taxidermy was symbolic. Grandpa's eccentric taxidermy hobby wasn't just for laughs. Schumacher used it as a visual metaphor for death lurking in the background of the story. Stuffed animals lined the house, quietly reinforcing the theme of mortality while the boys battled creatures who defied it. The hobby also gave the film its cheeky final shot, with Grandpa grabbing a drink from the fridge as if vampire attacks were just another day in Santa Carla. And there you have it, 20 things you never knew about The Lost Boys. From accidental hair dye disasters to real-life boardwalk chills, it's clear this film wasn't just another teen horror flick. It was a perfect storm of style, music, attitude, and a cast that embraced every ounce of vampire cool. Over 3 decades later, it still feels fresh, partly because it never took itself too seriously, and partly because it gave us a whole new kind of vampire to root for or be terrified of. Whether you first saw it back in 2087 or you've just discovered it, The Lost Boys is proof that sometimes the scariest stories are also the most fun. It's a movie that's impossible to watch without wanting to crank up the soundtrack, grab a leather jacket, and maybe keep a little garlic on hand, just in case. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this trip behind the scenes, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more deep dives into your favorite movies. And remember, in Santa Carla, nobody ever really grows up.